Leadership is a learned skill. Welcome to episode number 31. In today's episode, I'm going to be showing you exactly why it's not only possible to get a promotion during the crisis, but why this is actually the perfect opportunity for you to get promoted. Listen on.
Welcome to Maximize Your Career with Stacy Mayer, a podcast about achieving your career goals while also being yourself.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Maximize Your Career. I'm your host, Stacy Mayer. So as you know, I help corporate managers get promoted into senior level executive positions. And I love nothing more than to get a message in my inbox first thing in the morning that has as the subject line, "I got promoted!" ! This was actually from a former client of mine, and we had been working to get her promoted into a director level position, an absolutely incredible executive, and she has so much value to offer her company. But the funny thing that I always felt for her was that her title was terrible. So she wasn't called a senior manager. She wasn't called anything with manager in the title. She was called head of blah, blah, blah. Right. And so many of you might be something like that, where it's like head of engineering, head of strategy. And one of the challenges with head of, as in a title, is it doesn't inherently imply any sort of management or leadership responsibility. The other thing is that it doesn't carry over into other organizations. So what was happening for her is she started getting a seat at the table. She was making the impact that she wanted to be making. She was essentially operating at a director level, but her title still said head of. And, you know, it may not seem like a big deal, but let's say she was going to leave her company, which she's not because now she just got a promotion, super exciting. But let's say that she was going to leave her company and start looking for other jobs. It's really hard to defend yourself to say, but I was really operating at a director level. Like, you're always going to have to take that step back if your resume doesn't speak to where your actual job responsibility is at. And so that's one of the things that I was encouraging her to do, to actually get the title increase. And it's something that if you communicate effectively, if you know what you want, if you are able to speak to your boss and the leadership team and the influencers at your organization in a way that it becomes a no-brainer to promote you into that position, that's how you're actually going to be able to make that happen. So congratulations to my client. I'm super excited. And, you know, I want you to be one of those next people that shoots me an email and says, I got promoted. So if that sounds interesting to you, I'm just going to say it right here. I usually save this for the end of my episodes, but you need to sign up for a free career strategy session. Those are sessions that are available by application only. You can go to my website at stacymayer.com/apply. That's stacymayer.com/apply. And we'll talk about how we can get you to that next level of impact, leadership, and the title that you deserve. So go to that page or shoot me an email. I would love, love, love to hear from you, because I really am committed to my mission of making the leadership table a more diverse place to be by getting 1,000 managers promoted into senior level executive positions each and every year worldwide. So I want you to be one of those managers. Check that out. Now, as we get into this episode, speaking of getting a promotion, so we're right in the middle of the global pandemic. I don't know if we're at the end or if we're in the middle. We're about 4 or 5 months in. I mean, the days just blend together at this point. But what we know is that chaos is abound, right? That things are pretty nutso out in the world, that our lives feel turned upside down, and it's been pretty much an insane several months in the world. And many people have, of course, lost their jobs, and many people have been shuffled around. Many people are working harder than ever before. And what is happening in technology, in the tech companies that I tend to work for the most, is that a lot of things are staying the same, right? Like they're busy. They have a lot of work to do. They have deliverables, and some of those deliverables have changed. It's different. There's reshuffling, reorgs happening. People are still getting laid off at these bigger organizations, but essentially they're working really, 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 really hard. So the corporate managers that are in my sphere, the people that I'm talking to on a daily basis, are the ones that are working their butts off right now. And what I want to do is make sure that at the end of the day, that they get the recognition that they deserve, that they actually get promoted into that next level leadership position. So that is my goal. So if you're one of those people that are working your tail off right now and you want to make sure that you don't get passed over for yet another promotion, then this episode is for you. So when we think of senior executive leaders, we know that they're good at crisis management. We know that because organizations inherently go through ebbs and flows. They go through crises at some point in the organizational lifespan, right? And so a lot of times senior executive leaders are very adept at handling crisis, working hard through crisis, thriving during crisis. So this is often something that is part of their wheelhouse, something that they're very good at doing. But at the director level, or even at the vice president level, it can be very strenuous to work during a crisis. It can be something that you're not necessarily used to. You're used to being able to think more strategically. You're used to being able to manage your time a little bit better. But ever since the pandemic has hit and things got turned upside down, and now you're working from home and you're juggling new responsibilities, you're noticing that your habits, the habits that maybe are not the best habits, are showing up in full force, right? Those are the ones that are shining their light, everywhere you go. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can't handle this. I can't work at this tiring of level. I can't maintain this energy for much longer. So I'm going to point out today what are some of the mistakes that you might be making in terms of your career development, in terms of making that level of impact that you really want to be making. So I'm going to share with you 3 mistakes, 3 things that you can let go of almost immediately. And then I'm going to show you 3 ways that you can actually leverage yourself smarter, not harder, during this particular crisis. Just to start out with, I want to tell you why being in the middle of a crisis is actually the perfect time to get promoted. So we are essentially in the middle of a major restructure, both internally and externally. So what do I mean by that? Crisis is basically a time when you reevaluate your priorities internally. So I'm looking at you personally, looking at your life, and you start to reevaluate what's important. So if you think about other crises in your life, if something, terrible happened, or we lose a loved one or something like that, it's a time to reevaluate, to say, what are my priorities? What do I really want in life? What really matters to me? And what is happening to people is that they're reevaluating this. They're at home with their families. They're working their tail off, and they're asking themselves, why? Why am I working so hard? Why am I sweating to the bone in this career that, yes, I worked hard to get here, and generally I like it, but is it worth all of the stress and headache and, whatever? So this is the internal reorientation that is happening for you. And Here's an example of a client of mine. So as soon as the crisis hit, she had this internal re-examination. So she was somebody who worked her butt off, right? All the time, like even before the crisis. She was known as a worker bee, a hard worker, worked really hard, worked her fingers to the bone. And when the crisis hit, her daughter was actually sick. So she had no choice but to just take a week off. She was like, I can't do this. I'm just going to take a week off. And the amazing thing that happened during that week off is that she shifted all of her priorities. She gave herself that perspective to figure out what was really important at work, what meetings she should be attending, what levels of responsibility she wanted to do more of. And when she came back to work, she was so refreshed. She was so clear on her vision. She was so clear on the impact that she wanted to be making and how she wanted to help manage her team through this crisis that they had no choice but to say, thank you. They were like asking her questions. They were saying things to her like, I admire you for prioritizing. I admire you. And this was unheard of just 3 months prior, right? Like it definitely was not her nature to do that. But because of the crisis, she gave herself that perspective and she challenged herself to do better. And now an external reorientation, what this looks like is literally what you're experiencing every day. Maybe your boss left recently, like left the company, got laid off, or even just left. That seems to be happening more and more frequently, that they're going to other companies. There's so much job shifting happening right now. And we all know that when job shifts happen, that gives us opportunity to step up. Bob Iger, in his book, Ride of the Lifetime, he talks about moving from COO of Disney to the CEO of Disney. And he had to be ready. He had to be ready to step up to the plate. He had to be ready to take on that level of responsibility. And that is what the external reorientation is that so many changes are happening, so many shifts are happening. And I want you to be ready so that when your boss does leave the organization or some crazy swapping and reorg and all this other levels of responsibility, you can not only say, yes, I'll take on that responsibility, but you can do it in a way that you feel really clear about, that you know how to set boundaries, that you know how to think more strategically, you know what your responsibility is, and you know what your big vision is. So that's the external change that's happening right now. Both of those happening at the same time is the ultimate opportunity for you to get promoted into a senior level leadership position. This is when change happens. And I want you to be able to take advantage of that. So as I promised, these are 3 mistakes that you're probably making right now. And I just want to point them out because I think awareness is so important. And I want you to just see how these particular mistakes are actually holding you back from having success in your career. So one of the things that a lot of people are doing right now is keeping their head down, working really, really hard. I already alluded to that. But more importantly, thinking that that is the right thing to do. And this one kills me because you're a hard worker. You're an overachiever. You are a person that does what they say they're going to do, right? You deliver, you have a great ROI, right? You're keeping your head down, you're getting your work done, you're doing a fantastic job. And all of that on paper is a great idea until it comes to promotion time. And unfortunately, the people who keep their head down and aren't paying attention to their own professional development, they don't see or understand the needs of the organization, and they aren't able to communicate the value that they bring to the organization, are the first ones who are going to get passed over. So I beg you, if you're somebody that is keeping their head down with the expectation that someday you will receive a promotion for all of your hard work, it ain't happening. So get yourself out of the weeds so that you can get promoted, so that you can actually see the opportunities. And I'll tell you more about what some of those opportunities might be in a minute. Another thing that's probably happening right now is that you're waiting it out. you're saying, okay, now is not the time to actually go for a promotion. So I'm just going to lay low. I'm going to keep quiet. I'm not going to bring anything up. Well, chances are, I want you to do a reality check. Are you the type of person that always waited it out? Are you the type of person that always waits until your performance review to actually have a professional development conversation with your boss? And if that's the case, then, just notice that your excuse that I'll advocate for myself when the crisis ends is actually just an excuse. It's normally your habit to just sort of wait it out. And why that is even worse, a worse thing to do now than under normal circumstances, is because while you're waiting it out, stuff's happening. External craziness is happening around you. People are prioritizing, shifts in the organization that you could be taking advantage of in a good way to really be able to leverage your impact are happening all around you. And you waiting it out is not going to get you into a senior level executive position. And the third thing that I want you to avoid is just a complete lack of strategy and direction. Right? So most people think that, I don't really know how to quote unquote go for a promotion. Well, congratulations. You're listening to my podcast and I tell you exactly what it means to actually go for a promotion. So that's the first thing. And then just owning that I have a strategy. So even during the pandemic, even during a crisis situation with all the chaos happening around me, I have an actual strategy for my professional development. So I want you to own that. I don't want you to rely on just being like, well, I'll figure it out when the time comes, and just go out, figure it out, schedule a free career strategy session with me if you like to help you figure it out. But that is what I want you to do. Now, what are the opportunities that are in front of you that you can begin taking advantage of specifically because we are in a crisis situation? The number one thing, and this is something that right out of the gate, I was telling every single one-on-one client that I had, I was saying, you have got to start communicating what you are enjoying about your job right now. So I guarantee you, there is some aspect of this crisis, no matter how head down you are, how in the weeds you are, there is some level of responsibility that you have been given that you're actually enjoying. And, one example of this is that a lot of people in this, like I said, in the senior executive position are made for crisis, right? Like when crisis hits, they become a better performer. So if you are one of those people that are noticing that this level is being pulled out of you, that you're really stepping up to the plate and you're actually enjoying it, then the crisis gives you the most perfect opportunity to communicate that to your boss. Communicate to your boss what you are enjoying about your new roles and responsibility. Communicate to your boss what you want more of, and let the leadership team know what you're seeing, what's happening in the organization, what feels good about what's happening in the organization. So all of these things are just something that, first of all, you need to start noticing, is this happening for me? Are there certain new things that I'm learning or responsibilities I'm being given that I actually enjoy? And then just learning how to actually communicate that. The second thing that you have the opportunity to do, specifically because of the crisis, is to actually ask for a seat at the table. Now is your chance to say to your boss, I would love to be a fly on the wall at this meeting. I would love to listen. I would love to be included in some of the strategy sessions that you're doing, right? So actually asking for that seat at the leadership table, asking to be involved in more strategic decisions, because things are happening differently, and your boss should be very excited about that you're wanting to step up in that way. So I really encourage you to get in front of the CEO, to get in front of the senior executives that you wouldn't normally get in front of. Normally, these people are traveling, constantly traveling, but they're not right now, right? They are available. You can get in front of them. And so I want you to get more and more face time with the senior leadership team. And the third thing that you're going to do right now to really leverage the crisis as an opportunity to actually get you to that next level of leadership is no longer rely on things just happening. And what I mean by that is so many people, they rely on passing their boss in the hallway, passing the CEO in the elevator, passing somebody who's important at the water cooler, right? They rely on these sort of passing times to have conversations with these very important people. And because of the crisis, you can't do that anymore. You can't just pass in the hallway. I actually worked with a woman at the beginning of the crisis, and she said one of the most annoying things is that she's no longer speaking up at meetings. And I said, why? Why aren't you able to speak up at meetings? And she said, oh, well, usually before the meetings, I talk to John. He sits right next to me and we brainstorm about it. And then I go into the meeting feeling a lot more confident. So I notice that I'm not speaking up as frequently. So we got to work on how she could actually have those meetings with John on a regular basis, like actually go out and make those meetings happen, right? So we can't rely on circumstance. We can't just, our happenstance. We can't just rely on things just happening for us. We have to actually actively go out and do it. And what that gives us is that gives us a unique ability to recreate it. It gives us the skills that we need to make that happen in the future. So when, and I say when, because you are going to get promoted into a senior level executive position at some point, when you do get promoted, you know the skills necessarily to ensure that you're actually speaking up at every single meeting. You know how to go out and set yourself up for success every single time. So that is another benefit that the crisis is giving you, is actually creating a process for yourself, a process for your leadership, and you can start owning that. So these are the three things that I want you to do is you're going to be able to communicate what responsibilities that you're enjoying right now. Because of the crisis, you're going to actually ask for a seat at the table, and you're going to no longer rely on your crap that you used to rely on as things just happen because you passed somebody in the hallway, and you're actually going to schedule it. You're actually going to make it happen for yourself. If you do these three things over the next few months, because this crisis is not over yet, if you do these over the next few months, you do what I'm talking about, you pull yourself out of the weeds, you ask for a seat at the table, you will be setting yourself up to get promoted into a senior level executive position. What you do right now in terms of your career affects what is going to happen to you in terms of your career 6 months down the line, right? This is the long game. You need to start putting these strategies in place now if you hope to get promoted by the end of the year. If you hope to get promoted by June 2021, you have to start putting these strategies into place. And here's the good news. Just like I said, external reorientations are happening right and left. So you never know. You might be given that opportunity. And I want you to be ready to not only to say yes, but I want them to actually ask you to take that position. So I encourage all of you to just really take advantage of this opportunity as a way to step into a higher level leadership role, to show them exactly what you are made of, and to get yourself promoted into a senior level executive position so that you can actually make the impact that you want to be making at your organization. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.